The cinematic city. It is a concept that has encapsulated film since the birth of the video camera, and it is defined as the cinematic representation of a city as a kind of artistic mediation between a city and people. From early silent films such as The Man with the Movie Camera and Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, all the way to more recent films of today such as The Children of Men, the cinematic city has been a constant in the world of film and has been pivotal in showing humanity's relationship to its cities and local communities. However, this begs the question, what exactly makes up the cinematic city? Well, there are many answers to this question. The people that make up the city, the homes they live in, museums, schools, places of business, skyscrapers, public transportation, all of these things make up the cinematic city. But one of the most interesting answers to this question, in my opinion, are the streets that make up the city. Streets, avenues, boulevards, ways, whatever you want to call them. City streets are the foundation for every modern city. But why exactly are city streets so important? Well, in order for people to be able to travel throughout a city, they need a city that has accommodating streets for a variety of methods of transportation. Ideally, modern cities need to be walkable, while also accommodating cars, bikes, and public transportation. In today's modern world, cities have become extremely accommodating to cars and other motor vehicles. The problem is, many people don't even own cars, and the increasing construction of major roads and highways make walking places extremely difficult for the average person. For example, let's say Tara wants to walk to the grocery store to buy ingredients for dinner, and the grocery store is only 2 miles away. That's not too far. Tara should be able to walk to the store, right? Well, 2 major highways that are impossible to cross separate her from the grocery store. Now, she can take a detour to get around the highways, but that means she has to walk 5 miles instead of 2. This recent trend in making city streets less and less walkable in order to accommodate cars is completely paradoxical to the concept of the cinematic city. Not only is it often more convenient to be able to walk somewhere, but it is also essential for people who may not be able to afford a car or simply don't want to own one. And don't get me wrong, cities do need to accommodate cars to a certain extent, as many people own them and need them in order to get to their jobs and other essential destinations. But it should not come at the cost of making cities less walkable. In recent years, the idea of the 15-minute city has gained popularity, and it posits that you should be able to walk through a city from one end to the other in 15 minutes. The idea is popular for a number of reasons, from people just wanting to be able to walk from place to place easily, and because it's very good for the environment. But nevertheless, it is clear that walkability is an absolutely essential aspect to city streets. City streets can often take an identity of their own and become more than simply a row that contains houses and buildings. Take, for example, Broad Street, a street that runs through the center of Philadelphia vertically. Despite all other streets that run vertically in the city being numbered, Broad Street is the sole exception, taking the place of what would be 14th Street. It gains special status as it runs through the center of the city, all the way from the South Philadelphia Sports Complex, through City Hall, past Temple University, and all the way up to Cheltenham Avenue. Broad Street has in many ways become a symbol for the city of Philadelphia itself, and every single inhabitant of the city would be able to point it out on a map with zero hesitation. If you want to see more streets with their own unique identity, then look no further than the biggest city in the United States, New York City. With a city as large and culturally influential as New York, there are many streets throughout the robust urban metropolis that have taken on an identity of their own. The most famous example would of course be Wall Street, home of the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest stock exchange in the world, and home of many of the world's biggest financial institutions, such as banks, private equity firms, and hedge funds. It was also the center point of Martin Scorsese's 2013 film, The Wolf of Wall Street, a movie about a New York stockbroker who was willing to engage in numerous illegal and immoral activities in order to make as much money as possible. And this storyline fits Wall Street to a T, as Wall Street is very controversial and has become the face of the worst parts of corporate greed and capitalism in the United States. On top of that, many of the financial institutions and banks headquartered along the street were largely responsible for the 2008 financial crisis. And none of the companies nor any of the people that worked for them saw any repercussions. And this brings up another point. Just because a city street takes on an identity of its own does not necessarily mean that it is a good identity. There are also city streets that may add an overall negative influence on the rest of the city as a whole. Nevertheless, the influence of Wall Street continues to feed its way into notable media and film on an extremely widespread scale. City streets are what make up the cinematic city. They are the bridges that bring people together in an urban environment centered around people and human interaction. They are what link neighbors to their homes, students to the schools they attend, and workers to the places of business they work for. Without city streets, the cinematic city ceases to exist. Without city streets, all you have is a mess of communities with no direction and no structure. City streets are what provide identity and structure to the cinematic city, and without them, the bridges between people no longer function. It is safe to say that there is no cinematic city without the presence of city streets.